day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coast of Games Radio. And today's episode is all about the big new 3 flashy theme park additions in Central Florida. That includes Tiana's Bayou Adventure at Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World, Phoenix Rising, the new suspended family-ish coaster by B&M at Busch Gardens Tampa, and then last but not least, a Penguin Track at SeaWorld Orlando, replacing the previous Empire of the Penguin dark ride, and now it's kind of like both a dark ride-ish and a roller coaster.
Mm-hmm. It's a story coaster.
It's a story coaster. We love that.
If that. It might not even qualify as a story coaster.
And so, because Tiana's Bayou Adventure coasts uphill, that is the story coaster of the 3. And
we do count her.
Do you count her?
I
guess we count her.
We count her.
Oh my god, we're going to lose everyone in a minute. We're going to lose everyone before the first minute.
1 minute in, everyone's like, these losers.
So yeah, we're going to be discussing that as like a bonus episode. So when this comes out, it'll be freshly after recording. Because today we went to ride Penguin Track, and then yesterday Phoenix Rising, and like 3 or 4 days ago Tiana. So it all kind of happened in succession. So we are going to make this what Alice calls a roller coaster sandwich, and we're going to start off with Phoenix Rising. So Phoenix Rising took over the plot of 3 rides. Alex, which 2 rides were those? Actually, I know that.
You're so corny.
But I want to give you time to talk.
Do you know? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't there for Phoenix Rising. I was at work, stuck flying with this airline meltdown thing that everyone's, been talking about and caught up in. But yeah, so Phoenix Rising is open to the general public, and it was a replacement of not 1, but 3 rides at Busch Gardens. I guess in a way it was a replacement of 2, because the Intamin looping ship had been dormant for so long that that was already kind of a loss that had been taken independently of this new edition. But the Red Baron Kitty Airplane Ride and Cheetah Chase, or no, Sand Serpent is what it was called by the end of it. It opened as Cheetah Chase.
Yeah, Cheetah Chase before Cheetah Hunt,
yeah.
And then against Sand Serpent.
Yeah. So they lost the little mouse coaster and the Kitty Airplane Ride and the Intamin ship, and now they have a full-size, a pretty large family coaster.
I would say it's full-size.
A full-size family coaster that runs 1 train, but looks cool. And considering the space they had to work with, they did a pretty cool job with it.
They did a good job. They did a cool job with that. So I will say, in the grand scheme of Pantopia, which is the themed area it's in, it's all kind of small rides. You have your stadium. We got a couple flat rides. And then, now you have Scorpion, and then you have Phoenix Rising. And it all work very well together, and they've all been kind of themed to be in the same area. And I think Pantopia is the nicest area at Busch Gardens Tampa for that reason, because it does have a really coherent theme, and Phoenix Rising fits in there pretty nicely. What they did with the space was creative. The ride layout is decently long for what's actually a really compact ride. Like I was telling Alex, I always feel like it just fills more of a flat ride gap than it fills anything else, despite having replaced a roller coaster and 2 flat rides.
I've always said that they kind of ran Scorpion in flat ride mode because they never run 2 trains on it. It's always just kind of like it goes, it comes back, and then dispatch, reload, etc.
Yeah. Well, this is very much similar in that regard, except for the ride is a little bit quicker because the lift hill is quicker, I think. Because the lift hill is very fast. But yeah, so it fits a nice gap. The queue is completely outside. Which is very hot. There's like a couple shade structures, but they really don't do anything. I feel like they're almost in the opposite direction of where they should be. There's some really cute theming that's kind of like Phoenix and luggage and travel things related. It looks pretty good. And then the station itself, I will say, is quite nice. So the station, despite being basic, it's not like anything spectacular. Not like there's like a whole like a major Disney or Universal coaster kind of station, but they did a good job because they have 4 LED screens that are in the background, and they kind of are supposed to be like windows. And there's 4 different phoenixes. Is Phoenix is the word of phoenixes? What
Phoenix,
is it?
Phoenixes is probably fine.
Phoenixes. There's 4 different kinds of phoenixes that you will get on like almost like a rotation in the station. So there's a red one, a green one, and then kind of like a teal one and a blue one, and they all have different names. And in the queue, there's explanations of what they do and what their strengths are, and there's like a bit of a story there. And then when your train dispatches, one of the phoenixes will then come out of the. It's themed to being. What is that kind of called? Like churches, the windows.
Like stained glass?
Like stained glass windows.
Yeah.
And then like the stained glass windows break and this phoenix comes out and flies around as you leave. And so there's LED lights on the underside of the train. Super not noticeable unless it's dark out. But they change color based on which phoenix is part of your ride experience. And then there's onboard audio, but that wasn't working for us because it was only day 2 operation. So by then, it obviously wasn't working anymore.
Should have written it on the first day.
Should have written it on the previews, I suppose. So that's kind of like the overall feel of the ride. Layout wise, it starts off with a pretty quick lift hill, and then you have almost like a double down drop, kind of weird. Like you have a bit of a small drop, and then you make a turn and have a bigger drop.
It looks cool.
Into an egg turn, like an overbank egg turn, and then you go up, and you have another drop after that, which is kind of nice. Like it's nice to have like a series of drops. Then you do like a little hop, like an S hop. Do you think it'd be airtime, but there isn't really much airtime? Then you have a giant swing over the entrance, which is framing the entrance so nicely. I feel like it's definitely part of the layout that was designed to look as cute as it does. It's followed by another swing up and a helix down, and then kind of like a U-turn back into the brake. So it's not super long, but it's decent size for what it's like a family suspended coaster. If you look at the original 2 in China, they don't do a whole lot, to be honest. This one does a lot more, has a lot more kick to it, more pacing. My only real problem with the ride is that, first of all, the audio wasn't working on like literally day 2 of operations, but I can see past that because who needs audio on a ride like that? That was already kind of an interesting choice. But what kind of bothered me was that it was already very rattly, and I was explaining to Alex, and I feel like the way that the train design is done, traditionally speaking, the B&M invert is 4 seats. And it attaches to the bogie, I guess, or the chassis by two points.
Yeah.
But then on these, it's kind of like a fork, right? So it's only attached to one part of the train, and then there's 2 seats attached to that fork. And in a way, it feels way rougher than it had any right to be. It was rattly. It didn't track that well. It probably tracks fine, but it was just the way that the trains didn't articulate it that well. And if you're used to the Vekoma ones, there's a little bit of a swing in them. So when they come into the station, they're actually kind of sideways because they swing in. There's absolutely no movement whatsoever on these trains, and I didn't think it was that comfortable. I definitely like the ride layout, I will say that, but it really wasn't that comfortable. I will say that for a ride that's so brand new and it is a B&M, comfort level wasn't all that. But it's a cute addition. Like, don't hate me, or I don't hate the ride. I think it's a cute addition. We waited maybe 50 minutes for it in the sun, which is kind of brutal. Yeah, and they weren't even letting in that many types of quick queue, but there was still a lot of quick queue. I feel like they didn't really ratio it that well. Like, everyone in quick queue got right on, and maybe there were 6 seats left on every train that went for the regular queue. And dispatches were pretty tragic. Like, I didn't think... we were lucky to get maybe 10 dispatches in an hour. I get it, it's one train. You have maybe like a minute ride cycle. Maybe a minute and a half ride cycle. That would be generous. Maybe a minute ride cycle. But yeah, it just took forever to get a train out. And then the restraints aren't that accommodating. So I feel like almost every train they had to, open the restraint, get someone to sit back, and then be pushed in because the restraints are honestly not great.
The height requirement is low because the
restraints are special.
But they pinch your thighs.
And then we'll talk about Penguin Track later, but they're the exact same seats and exact same restraints as Penguin Track, which means that they're kind of like rounded outward so that it would nicely snuggle like a child's lap, but it's only the width of a child. So when you're riding it as an adult or a bigger person, it's almost like you are much wider than the restraint is. So the restraints ends, where the bow ends, they kind of just like pinch into your whatever body part. And I didn't think it was that comfortable, and I don't think it's that accommodating, which is surprising because the ride is thrilling enough, I think, that it should at least have adult restraints. I think that for Penguin Track, too.
It's a pity because, we've ridden both of the junior B&M inverts in China. They're identical. They're both at Happy Valley Parks, Beijing and Shanghai, respectively. And they're actually basically clones of the Vekoma family invert, the, Fast and Freedom Flyer layout. And those rides, not only are they really comfortable because the seat molds are essentially Banshee's seat mold and restraint, but without the vest part of the vest restraint. So it's just an over-the-shoulder lap bar. It's really comfortable, and they feel very sturdy, and they run really smooth. So, I was disappointed to hear that it was rattling, like it was a rattly ride. Because I mean, I was just while you were talking, I was looking at the videos that I took of the invert in Beijing and like the train design, and I mean they're exactly the same. The vehicle designs
really?
are
So?
identical.
Yeah, this didn't run as well. I don't know what the difference was. Maybe it was more noticeable because the restraints are different, because there was vest restraints on the ones in Beijing and Shanghai. But
well, they don't really have vests. It's the same vest restraint as Banshee, but without the vest part. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like the over-the-shoulder lap bar part, but without the vest part. And so it's like, I would hope, I don't know, hopefully it's just an issue with the train. Like, maybe the train's just loose and needs to be tightened up or something, because, like, we know that they can run really nicely.
And what I also want to mention about Phoenix Rising is that, again, they integrated quite nicely with the area, and one of those things is that there was already a pre-existing gift shop, which I think is the Camels something gift shop. I forgot the name of it. But you now enter...
Painted Camel.
Painted Camel. I was about to say Camel's Painter.
The Camel's
Close enough.
Close enough.
So you go through the back of that gift store, and then you pop out the front. And there's a couple of Phoenix Rising merchandise pieces, and, you know, it's the typical more exotic things that they try to sell in the Busch Gardens theme. I don't think the gift store has changed a whole lot, except for now there's a back door, and that's what's being used when you are exiting Phoenix Rising. So overall, nice addition. I think it's a cute fit for Pentopia. One thing that really didn't help yesterday when we went to visit is that Kumba was down all day, Falcon's Fury was down all day, and Serengeti Flyer was down. So like the three closest major rides were all down. So I felt like it was kind of carrying that side of the park, and it's brand new. And they have this really cute theming, but then the kids are climbing all over it, and then it's already very damaged again at day 2. So it's that's just the downside of trying to do anything nice. That's not Busch Gardens' fault, nor B&M or anyone's fault. It's just the park patrons climbing all over the theming because they're bored in the line that never moves. So it is what it is. But I do think it's a nice addition. It's better than a flat ride, better than like an old school Wild Mouse. Like, it is really, it's an enjoyable layout, and I will definitely ride again if it isn't a long line.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't wait very long for it.
I look forward to checking it out. Hopefully, when we ride, the train will be in better shape. I'm sure there's a fair amount of troubleshooting that needs to be done. You know, every day is not the same for every ride. Even something as reliable and consistent as a B&M has good days and bad days, especially when you've got a coaster that runs one train. And, like, your entire experience on a ride hinges on whether or not that one train, your only option, is having a good day or a bad day. So
exactly. Let's move on to our next ride, which is Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Yeah, I mean, I spoke a lot because I just rode Phoenix Rising. So I'll let Alice kind of start off with...
pair this one?
Yeah, start off with
So we were
Tiana.
on the way home from SeaWorld, and Sean was like, let's put together like a Tiana script, because this is, of the 3 rides, this is the one that I think there's maybe the most to say. Am I wrong in saying that?
I also think most people that are into theme parks beyond the general coasters, which I'm hoping that includes some of our audience, there's a lot of different opinions out there about Tiana. I'm kind of excited to share our opinion about it.
Before we rode in person, we read lots of reviews. We listened to what some of our friends had to say about the ride. We watched a couple of different POVs. And normally we like to keep ourselves spoiler-free, but because the reviews of the ride, honestly, were kind of mixed, I think we agreed that it would beseech us. I think we would, we're going to enjoy the ride more if we can manage our expectations by, looking at looking at personally at what we've got going on here. And I think that did help. I think knowing some of the aspects, like the story and stuff, out in front of the ride and taking a minute to, imbibe that helped me, enjoy the ride more for what it is. And ultimately, it was our first time riding, and we really enjoyed it. Maybe it was just because we had our expectations where they needed to be, but I think overall we enjoyed it a lot, and the long short of it would be that we think it's an improvement over Splash Mountain. But that's not to say that the ride is perfect. There's definitely things about it. I put together a list of positives and negatives, and I wanted to start with the negatives first, because I don't think that the negatives are so overwhelming that I was like, well, let me get some of these negative things out of the way and then focus more on the positive things, because I think they did a lot more right by this ride than wrong.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. I think the most obvious issue about the ride is just that the plot lacks conflict. Like, the ride has a story, it tells a story, but the story kind of feels like it's geared towards, like, the Disney Junior audience, almost. Like, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse level of conflict, where there really is no conflict.
The story is so watered down. I guess there's no depth to it. It's just like, wow, there is no, I don't want to say there's no emotion, but there's no emotion.
Yeah.
Like, it's just very, very basic. And it's almost like one of those things where you'll be like, oh, you know what? Maybe this was designed for, like, an international audience. Because no one has to understand a single word to get the story. Because there really isn't a story. It is very, very basic. And that's, I think, its biggest downfall. Was get right off the bat. That's the biggest problem.
I was like, well, at the very least, it's like this. A lot of people can understand. This was actually one of my pros later. But, like, I wrote a lot of my pros and cons as, like, the other side of the coin. So, like, every negative on this list kind of has a positive on the other side of it. But I wanted to get all the negatives out in a row. But, yeah, there's not a whole lot of intensity when it comes to the story, especially compared. Like, this ride will always bear comparisons to Splash Mountain, whether it be, like, the story, the aesthetic, like, the source material, and that's always going to be, like, fine. I don't think it would be fair to tell someone to, like, look at Tiana with like, brand new, unbiased eyes if they had also ridden Splash Mountain and, you know, had an opinion of Splash Mountain, too. But definitely the ways in which that, like, Splash Mountain had a really dark story with, like, some pretty intense overtones and some pretty violent, like, it's just, like, intense themes. And then Tiana's Bayou Adventure has no intense themes. There's really not much at stake. But I think it's because they want their target audience, they want even, like, the littlest of little kids to not be scared. And I think that's a good enough reason to justify it. Especially, like, tonally, since there's been some more serious rides in the Disney I kind of just thought of this, but, like, some of the rides that Disney has been building lately in Orlando have had more serious overtones, especially in Magic Kingdom recently with Tron. So I feel like this is almost like, the tone of this ride is almost like a counterbalance to the very serious and dire tone of Tron. But my second major negative, which kind of is rolled into the lack of suspense or conflict in the story, is that the dialogue, which carries the story, is not very deep. Like you said, it's a shallow, kind of a shallow story, and the dialogue, which really is the story, it's being fed to us as we go along, because there's only so much you can show. The dialogue reflects a shallow story experience. So
the story being that, Princess Tiana is going to host this party, and it's not that, she's actually not really the princess of the party, but she's inviting everyone, and then she's in her, like, more general attire, right? The Tiana's food attire, whatever. And but they need musicians for the party. So the entire ride is just spent finding musicians, which is a generally cute idea.
It's cute and it's different.
But then the lines are just, oh my god, it's like, so you have a little band, and then Tiana, I'm not literally quoting her, but you have a little band playing, and it's cute, it's kind of all these animatronics, and because everyone wanted, and, and then Tiana's like, wow, they can play for sure. They're invited to the party, no doubt, or whatever. Yeah. They can play, no doubt. They're invited to the party for sure. Yeah. I'm like, all right, that's kind of a whatever line. And then the next band you see, the next musician's like, wow, they're great musicians. Let's keep looking. And it's like, all right, we get it. They're all great musicians. And then you get shrunken down, and then you have the mini, like, tiny little fireflies, and she's like, wow, great job finding small little musicians.
Tiny musicians.
They're coming to the party. And I'm like, we get it. They're coming to the party. Like that's there's literally nothing else to this ride but finding musicians in different places and taking them to the ride. And then there's one part where, like, there's a Grandma Odie.
Yeah.
Like, make shoe, like, string shoe, right? So, and then we'll get to that in a second, but she string shoe, and then... But Tiana's right there, and then Tiana's there, and then like not even maybe like a few feet later, you get shrunken into becoming really small, and then Tiana's like, "Where'd they go?"
It's like, well, where do you think?
We gotta find them, and then of course 5 seconds later she found you. But I'm like, oh my god!
It's like, well, we weren't lost. Like Madame Odie shrank us on purpose.
You were there, honey.
Yeah, like you were.
Surprised you're not
there.
shrunken.
Like what? Yeah, it's a little.
So it's a little, and then that's really all there is to it.
Like it makes you wonder. Like, did Madame Odie mean to shrink us? Did we get shrunk on purpose? Was this like a happy accident? Because I thought we were being shrank on purpose to like look for Firefly musicians.
Yeah, well, we are because
but then we're tiny.
We are
and
because
then
what's
Tiana's
his name?
like, where are you?
The gator, Lewis.
Yeah, Lewis.
He's over here like with his
bugs.
face stuck looking for bugs, and then we become like a bug.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's just not. There's
it
not a
almost
lot
feels
of
like
depth.
there's some bits and pieces like dialogue that is missing that could be added in, where they could be more explicit and say like, we need to shrink. We can use some magic. We could use some Bayou magic to shrink our friends down to the size of Fireflies so that they can ask the Firefly musicians to play the band, or something like that. Like, it's so vague, and the dialogue is so shallow that like it really could use a little help, like moving the plot along so that you're not trying to fill in all of the gaps yourself, like trying to arrive at the conclusion of like what everything that happens in the ride is actually supposed to mean. And then dovetailing off of that, the shrunken scene, the middle scene right where you're small, this was actually something that I hadn't thought of this, but Sean pointed it out to me after our ride. And so you go from 3D animatronic Tiana, which you've already seen like 3 or 4 full-size Tiana audio animatronics up to that point. And then once you're shrunken down to the size of a Firefly, you catch a glimpse through this like rotten log that you're inside of Tiana and Lewis, and they're like dancing, but it's a screen and they're 3D.
And it's very like blocky.
The
animation's
really
good.
I
didn't
keep
hate
thinking
it,
of
but
Polar Express.
Yeah,
it reminds me of like it's like good character modeling, bad animation.
But then my problem is then there's the Firefly scene. And every single thing on the ride is 3D. So you have 3D animatronics, obviously, 3D screens. Like, everything is high-quality 3D. Like, I will say the art style they went with, I love it. Like, I am here for it. However, then you get to the scene with the Fireflies, and it looks so flat in 2D that I feel like they almost a completely different art style used.
They went from, like, they go from the 3D audio animatronics to this 3D animation scene that you only see once. Like, there's only one scene.
Well, that, and then there's also Madame Odie has that too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
she does. And then you go, and then when the Fireflies are being depicted, like, immediately after the little 3D Tiana and Lewis scene, the Fireflies are in the same style as the actual film. Like, the 2D, paperless, hand-drawn style. So, I didn't really think about it much, but Sean's like, this is like a jarring... like
contrast,
juxtaposition of art styles happening at the same. And you're right; it breaks continuity. The change shuffling between the different art styles like really isn't necessary. It would be. I feel like it would kind of be cuter if maybe when you were shrunken down, instead of Tiana and Lewis being 3D, if they were also like the animated style.
No, everything needs to be...
Do you want the Fireflies to be 3D?
I need the Fireflies 3D. I need the whole ride to be one style. It's not like we just changed universes. No, we just became small.
I have a theory that they didn't want to make the Fireflies 3D because they would look too weird. They wouldn't resemble the source material enough with...
It's probably what happened.
So sure they settled for the... I'm pretty sure that the cells, like some of the models and stuff, were taken directly from the movie. Like the Firefly, like the old lady Firefly with the walker... Which is, it's a fun gag because they're flying. Obviously, she doesn't need a walker, but, like, she has one and she's old. And, like, I feel like I can remember her distinctly as, like, as a filler character in the movie. So, I don't know. Definitely a good point. Not something that stuck out to me as noticeably as some of the other aspects of the ride, but definitely an interesting, like, choice for them. But I'm sure it's justifiable with the way that you could reverse engineer it and say, like, well, they did this for this reason, they did that for that reason, and then it kind of makes sense consequently. And then the rest of the issues are really more of, like, housekeeping. The ride itself is otherwise fine aside from these issues. Right now, the ride is just dealing with a lot of downtime. we've been told by various people that, like, a lot of the ride's hardware is the same. Some of that might be apparent to people who are more tech ride savvy than we are just by looking at the ride. And there may only be so much truth to that. But I've heard that, like, a lot of the downtime is related to certain mechanical components of the ride that were not replaced. Like, they were refurbished or remodeled or whatever, but maybe they should have been replaced. I don't know. And then some of it is probably related to the new animatronics, because this animatronics are all sensor-driven, and, like, it's a complex ride now. It's a lot more complex than it was before, so it may not even be as much of hardware issues as it is, like, getting the timing in right so that the ride functions and is satisfying and does what it needs to do. So it's having downtime issues much in the same way that every new ride does, except that I think for a lot of people it's surprising how much downtime it's having, because as far as everyone else is concerned, it's like, well, it's a 35-year-old ride. Like, it should run great. It should be consistent and running as well as Splash Mountain did. And it's like, but it doesn't. And then I guess also just for now, some of the stuff is pretty temporary. Obviously, the kinks are going to get worked out, hopefully. And then right now it's virtual queue only, which just inherently sucks. I don't know why. I mean, I guess I get, like, now every new ride is just going to have to go through this process, I guess. Like, it's just a fact of life, of Disney in 2024. But, like, Tiana has virtual queue. I think it's dumb and unnecessary because, like, I don't know, who wants to get VQ for a ride and then it's a water ride and then you get, like, what if your group is at the end of the day and it's cold? Like, I don't know. It's going to be weird in the wintertime when, like, you're being forced into riding a water ride, like, after dark.
You think it'll last the wintertime?
I mean, I didn't think Cosmic Rewind was going to last this long, and, like, here we are. So.
I also think it would be a bigger problem in Anaheim. I mean, it's warm here during the wintertime a lot. Even at night, I think. I feel like Anaheim, if they do this, is really going to suck, because I feel like it can get quite cold in Anaheim at night.
I'm just tired of not being able to, like, hop in line for rides right before close, like, new rides and stuff. Like, I'm really desperate to have my, like, 5 minutes before close hop in line ritual for Tron.
Well, I feel like it's going to come.
Like, it will, but it's going to take, at the rate we're going, it's going to take, like,
I mean, they dropped it for, like, Rise of Resistance pretty quick, and then you could just hop right in line before close, and it was all pretty quick.
It's so nice. That's such a relief. But then I really thought Cosmic Rewind would have done that by now, and it's irritating.
Cosmic Rewinds carries fucking Epcot. I don't think Tron nor Tiana carry Magic Kingdom because there's so much more to do, and the general public loves all of it.
Yeah.
I feel like at Epcot there's so little to do that's actually good.
And
that, like,
at least Ratatouille got off of it, right? There's no Ratatouille VQ anymore. I should probably know that. And then finally, right now, Tiana is not even staying open with the rest of the park. We found out during our ride visit day that, like, we needed to plan around riding it before 8 o'clock because, I guess, it closed at 8 o'clock. We did a VIP tour with some family friends of ours, which is what afforded us the opportunity to ride Tiana without having to, like, do a boarding group or do all of that stuff. We were able to just go over to the ride and ride it when we felt like it. But the guide was like, yeah, it closes at 8, so we have to plan around that. And I was like, ew, okay, well, that's that. So majority of the stuff will get sorted out. And then for the positives, the first few bullet points that kind of are like the other side, the flip side of some of the things that we talked about that were kind of detractors. I would say that a positive is that while we said earlier that the story has no conflict or very little conflict, and it's, like, not very suspenseful, it is easy to understand, appeals to a very broad audience. And then also just, like, the whole point, like, the premise of the ride and the setting is just different and interesting. And I think it's likable on principle that because it's so different and just, like, you know, it's a food co-op. She's a farmer and a chef. Like, it's just different, you know? I'm so used to the usual things, superheroes and superpowers and saving the world and things going wrong. And this is just
because you go to Universal too much, but yeah.
I have to save the world 4 times a visit at Universal. And here it's like, oh, great, we're farming. Like, this is different. This is cute. And, like, personally, I know you've felt this way too, but, like, Splash Mountain's story, especially on the Magic Kingdom one. Anaheim's, it was a bit more ambiguous, but Magic Kingdom's Splash Mountain, like the story.
Briar Patch where you're born, or Briar Patch where you're gonna stay.
Yeah, Mr. Bluebird
thanks,
had some interesting words.
Bluebirds had words
by the end of the ride, where it's very like the takeaway was like, don't leave your hometown, which is like anyone with a Facebook account knows that like that's
you don't want to be
terrible.
that person.
That's terrible advice.
Yeah, you want to be a mom babe. You want to be a mom boss babe
yeah.
at the MLM that's down the
and
street
think,
now.
And you think Olive Garden is fancy. You've
never
never left your hometown. But
Olive Garden, it's fine.
So I just like that it's just different. Maybe I'm just too easily pleased and that like different is being conflated with good. But for me, different is inherently good. And I just like the theme. I like it. It's different. I like that it's different. And I just like it. Speaking of liking things, the characters, I think, are likable. And even though what they have to say isn't particularly deep or varied, I think they're nice-looking animatronics. And
so here's the biggest thing. A lot of people were like, well, we lost so much from from Splash Mountain. It's like void of animatronics. Now, I don't think that's true. I think, that maybe Splash Mountain had more going on animatronically, but, had nothing else going on. Like, it was animatronics or, like, honestly kind of, like, barely painted walls. Like, it really was once inside the building. I didn't think Splash Mountain was all that. And these animatronics, I think they kept some of that feel of Splash Mountain where it's, like, it's cute, it's musical, because, again, you're looking for these musicians. So you have 3 or 4, if not 5 scenes where there's animal musicians, whether it's a cute raccoon and a cute bear, whatever. Like, it's all very cute. It's all very, like, in a way, almost Splash Mountain-y, like cute animals making music, hopping around, doing their thing.
This ride that's actually very true to the
Splash Mountain feel.
To the tone of Splash Mountain.
It just feels upgraded,
I guess,
in a way,
like, before things go awry, but, like, yeah.
So I think that criticism out there, I really disagree with it. Yeah. I think that there's just the same amount of cuteness to the ride. In fact, I find it much cuter. I never quite understood what was going on when it came to Splash Mountain, which character was doing what. And then there was the Bear Fox, and then there was the Brick Bear. But now it's all kind of cute, and the characters that you do that are really more important, like Lewis and Tiana and Grandma Odie or Mama Odie, Madame Odie. They, of course, have more going on. They're larger in their presence, but I think in general the animatronic game is quite strong, even for the non-main characters, like the musicians, I guess.
Yeah. Really, the ride went from a major style shift from, like, a lot of Small World-esque, like, small movement animatronics that just kind of play on a loop and you drift by, to animatronic, like, scenes, sequences, events that take place and they're triggered by sensors. So even if there's fewer animatronics, what you're looking at has a lot more substance. There's clear focal points in every scene, and less of just like various like birds and characters, bopping around, forward and back. So I think that's just kind of a execution shift that I think people are getting used to.
And like I want to say the big animatronics. Very nice. They're very much like Zootopia. Do you agree? Like how, it's like the big animal, like they're kind of wide and they're furry and then they have really lifelike motion movement. I don't exactly know what they do with the skin or how it works, but Lewis, I guess, is the main example here. He is really like a nice flowing animatronic. His head bobbing around, he's dancing the whole time.
He reminds me of the Clawhauser animatronic in Zootopia.
Right? Yeah, that's the police guy, right?
That's the cheetah.
And then you have the same situation with Tiana. I mean, her animatronic movements here's some of the best animatronics I've ever seen. So the money is there. The quality is 100% there in the animatronic department. 100%.
Yeah. And then, earlier we talked about the shrunken sequence and how it was a little odd with the way that some aspects of that were executed. Like, why we were shrunken down and, like, why some of the scenes look the way they do with, like, mixing of art styles and such. But I will say that, by and large, I like the shrunken scene sequence, because it caught me by surprise. Like, when I realized they were taking the whole section between, like, the coaster drop and the big lift hill to the final drop, and, like, you've transformed into, like, a bug, basically. I don't know, that was, like, really clever, and a nice way to fill up all of this ride, because there's so much ride. It's a big ride, And the story is pretty simple. You could tell this story in a ride that was half this length, you know. You could take a Frozen Ever After sized ride and tell the exact same story. But with this, they had so much room, so much space to do stuff with. It was kind of like, well, how do we stretch this out? Like, how do we expand on this and do some things that are like not necessarily going to be expected? And I think the whole like being shrunken down and having the coaster drop portion of the ride be the sequence that represents being shrunken down, I thought that was really fun and clever.
And then, like, I will say, I know we already talked about all the negatives, but I will say that the part where he's shrunken down, thematically, it is a little bit bare to me. I know that you're like, you know, it's kind of like a Toy Story effect. You know, stuff is larger than life. It's a bunch of big mushrooms. But I felt like it almost felt like Splash's soul was, like, haunting us down there. Like, it was, I don't know, I felt like it was not that different from the Laughing Place in a way that I was like, oh, this could have been maybe a little better. But there's this frog scene between the two drops. I love that frog.
I love the frog.
And, like, if you turn around and look at the drums he's playing, they're like, I guess they're maybe like jam lids, and they have like branding on them. Like I thought it was actually
there's like
quite
a perfume
nice
bottle that you
there.
like travel under before the drop.
Yeah, don't exactly know
cute,
where we are.
Like, Toy Story-esque.
Maybe we're on the side of a freeway where people just dump a bunch of trash.
There's no
it'd be very American. But
Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
But yeah, I wanted to say that about the shrunken scene.
But yeah, so as far as like the whole package for the ride, now that we've kind of moved on from the pluses and minuses of various aspects of the ride, we can take a look at the ride from the beginning, from the entrance plaza, which is they did a beautiful job landscaping it and upcycling it and like it looks sort of similar to how it did before, but now it's just a lot more colorful, better landscaping. It definitely starts telling the story early. I think with a big difference between this ride and Splash Mountain is that Splash Mountain kind of tells almost the whole story on Splash Mountain is told on the ride. Tiana's Bayou Adventure starts telling the story right when you enter the ride. There's a lot of stage setting that takes place with even the extended queue, with like the kids' garden, and then like going through the indoor portions of the queue and seeing like the newspaper clippings and the photos and like going into Tiana's kitchen. Like there's a much more broad storytelling component to the queue.
So my favorite part of the queue was really just where it became the salt mines. So like you start off with the Tiana's Foods building and all the cute kind of like touches and like the storytelling, but then you move on to the salt mines, which are really just the old, you know, like when we used to go to the station for Splash Mountain, it was kind of like, was it like dirt themed, like you're in the hill, but now it's like salt mine themed. They added some windows in there, and then you got the actual station, and they have the giant cranes in there. Like I think that part of the queue, it was convincingly nicely redone, despite using very much of the existing infrastructure. Yeah.
I really liked the transition into the salt mine and the station. It was just adorable. It was really. I guess I don't know what I was expecting. The curb appeal of the ride is great and like really elevated a lot. But then I thought like, how much are they really putting into like the queue and the plaza? Like, are things really going to change a lot here? Then I was like really blown away, honestly, with the queue experience of the ride and how much of that was elevated. Really, the whole ride, like the set designs. You could say what you want about the story, and if there's inadequate, like insufficient number of animatronics or whatever, I don't care. I think the scenes themselves, everything that sets the stage for these events is just beautiful. So much detail. The plants, like the foliage, the parts of the ride where you're not really looking at an animatronic directly, I still really enjoy this sort of like Anaheim Pirates of the Caribbean, Blue Bayou sort of vibe of like being in the marsh. It's definitely darker inside.
Oh yeah, but I was actually going to add that and say that I think that's actually my favorite part of the whole reskin. Like we mentioned earlier, the story isn't necessarily carrying the ride, but it's the sheer amount of detail added. Yeah. You think like, oh, Splash Mountain was detailed, or was a pretty ride, or whatever your thoughts may have been. This ride is like 100 times prettier. Oh my god, that first outdoor scene, it's shockingly detailed, and all throughout the ride you have the ceilings are covered in this new scenery, and then there's almost the Navi River journey level of like projection mapping in the background, creating a lot of depth to this, what is just walls. And, they used to be so obvious, the walls in Splash Mountain. It used to be like, oh, they're painted clouds on them. Like it's almost like a kindergarten, like, schoolroom, Yeah. But now there's depth to them, and there is, the lighting is very strategic, and then there's the fireflies in the background. Like Alex said, almost like Pirates in Anaheim, like the Bayou. Like, they brought that Bayou feeling inside very, very well. And, yeah, I think that is my favorite thing about the whole ride. I thought that the details were just... they put a lot of money into, like, hundreds of thousands of flowers or whatever not they had to add to that because it looks incredible. Incredible.
And then I would also say, like, encompassing the whole ride now, the music is great. I've always loved the music for Princess and the Frog. Randy Newman really outdid himself with this ride. I've always felt like the soundtrack for the ride was kind of underrated. This movie's kind of, I think, been a slow burn for a lot of people. It came out during a period of time where Disney wasn't really attracting a lot of attention. It was before the sort of current era renaissance of, like, Tangled and Frozen that we're seeing now, like Moana and Zootopia. So it's nice to see this ride getting its flowers, no pun intended. And it's nice seeing, like, the music, the source material. Even though this is a new story and the characters are, like, nobody's a frog anymore. The frogs in the ride are actually just frogs and not people that have been turned into frogs. But the music from the movie is something that...
But I thought at the very end you had the two frogs signifying Naveen and Tiana.
Well, there's two at the very beginning, too. They're the same two frogs.
Oh.
When you come off the lift hill. And they're just frogs. They're not Tiana and Naveen. I think it's, like...
a
callback.
Yeah, okay.
But it's because the source material is Princess and the Frog, so they have to have frogs. Like, frogs need to be on the ride, even though Tiana and Naveen aren't frogs anymore. I actually found out, this makes sense, but, like, I was reading about the ride, and I found out it's canon that because Tiana and Naveen were turned into frogs, that even though they're humans now, they can still talk to animals.
Oh, cute.
So I guess they do have a superpower.
I guess it makes sense because all the musicians are animals.
Yeah, but that's why...
And Lois is an animal. Everyone's an animal.
That's why it's not, like... The point being that at the beginning of the movie, Tiana couldn't talk to animals. And now she can. And even though she's not a frog anymore, she still can talk to animals, which is why the whole ride, like, the whole world building for Tiana is the way that it is, where she's, like, friends with Lewis and is an animal.
Makes sense.
Makes me curious for more media surrounding the franchise. I would love to know if, like, Tiana becomes this, like, medium where she can talk to animals and then transcribe what animals are saying to, like, other humans who can't talk to animals, or, who knows. But, but I digress. I'm getting away from my point. My point was that the music is awesome. The music, I think the song at the end of the ride, the finale song, is new, or I'm just not recognizing it. But, like, there's a lot of reprises of music from the film, and it's just as good as Song of the South, I think. And for every great song moment on Splash Mountain, there is an equally great song moment for Tiana's Bayou Adventure. So those were, like, big shoes to fill. Obviously, like, Song of the South, the music for Song of the South, that's an Academy Award-winning sound score. So, like, there's a lot riding on it, but obviously Randy Newman, being as capable as he was, like, definitely up to the challenge, and it holds up to that comparison really well. And then the last thing I would say is just that, like, the finale, which the Zippity Doodah riverboat sequence at the end of Splash Mountain is so iconic, and there was just a lot to live up to, a lot of expectations to live up to, and I think the final scene on Bayou Adventure really lives up to that legacy of, like, having several high-profile audio animatronics as the focal point, and then, like, numerous background audio animatronics as, like, the background, and then, like, the scenes, like, the stage...
all the musicians.
That's the background of
like,
the background.
It feels just as impressive as the previous.
It really is like a blockbuster moment. Like, there is so much happening in that final scene that is just like, wow.
Yeah, I would sort of agree with that. I still think that there should have been, like, there's this one screen that I think is not my favorite. I think we talked about it. You don't really mind it, and I kind of wish that there was animatronics in the little greenhouse on the side, or, like, whatever that little patio house thingy is, whatever you call it, like gazebo. But all things considered, I think Tiana's Bayou Adventure is just a knockout of the park. And again, the story depth could be a little bit better, but it doesn't feel low budget. It doesn't feel like the skim. It doesn't feel like it's just an overlay. It really does feel like they took the hardware and just created something completely different. And they added so much to it. I think I realized riding Bayou Adventure how much of Splash Mountain really wasn't anything. You were just kind of floating around. And now, I mean, like when you get up, you have your animatronic on the first lift hill, on the second lift hill, I should say. You have that whole swamp kind of area with used to just be some water. And then you have all the farming theming and all the way up to the first drop. There is just a lot more to it now. You have the giant water tower. I feel like they enhanced what was already there. And I don't feel like Splash was at all better. I don't think... I think they really improved on it all. And I must say that I think it's an overall much better, high-quality ride. And again, it doesn't feel low budget. It feels it feels like they spent a lot of money on making it what it is. And the only lacking thing, I think, overall, really for me, is the story. That's it. That's it. Yeah, just the depth. But yeah, all things considered, we really like it. Yeah, we enjoyed our rides on Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
And I think the story, we'll get used to it and we'll warm up to it. You can't warm up to a ride that feels cheap,
100%.
This ride's always going to feel like a high budget attraction. And like the story, it can grow on you. There's room for improvement on repeat rides when it comes to something like that. But if you have an under budget ride that's been choked to death with budget cuts, repeat rides are not going to help you there. So
fair enough.
I think Tiana's got all the right moves in all the right places.
And now let's head on to our last one, the least ride. We just wrote this
a few
hours ago. And let me just preface that I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I was too.
I was pleasantly surprised, but the whole thing, start to finish.
Yeah. The fact that you rode Phoenix Rising first is funny, because we live here. Everybody rode Penguin Trek as soon as they could. We just hadn't gotten around to it yet. Sean rode Phoenix Rising the day after it opened, and then Penguin Trek the day after that. The ride looks great. It has fabulous curb appeal as always.
Well, I will say, the space they had to work with, it's long. The first thing you notice is the sheer amount of track. And you're not used to B&M having that much track in one space because it's historically always, especially for sit-down, always been a 4-cross, right? For sit-down, always that's not... Oh, I guess Surf Coaster is it's unique too. Yeah. I guess SeaWorld really did be over here with the unique
B&Ms used to be almost non-existent.
And now
there's
a couple
3 in Central Florida.
But the fun of it is that it is long, but then the way they integrated it with the existing Penguin exhibit and then the previous Empire of the Penguin dark ride space, I was very pleasantly surprised. So much of the queue is indoor, which is so refreshing in Florida. SeaWorld, there isn't that much indoor queue. Manza has indoor queue, and this is indoor queue. And we kind of discussed it while we were there, and I think about it. We kind of refer to this as the next version of a big Manta ride. Because historically speaking, Manta, I feel like I always call it SeaWorld's golden age. It was Believe, it was Blue Horizons, it was Aquatica opening, it was Manta. SeaWorld was... SeaWorld really was top of the world, I think. Especially in Orlando, SeaWorld was the place to be back in the Manta days when they opened Manta. And I feel like this is the first ever time I felt this excitement for a ride at SeaWorld, which is really weird. It's just Penguin Track.
Yeah.
But the way they integrated with the animal exhibit, the queue is nice. It's a long ride. It has a bit of a dark ride to it.
A ride integrated with an exhibit to this degree since Manta.
Yeah.
It really is the second time they've done it.
Because once you get back to the station,
the attraction and the
ride
are inseparable.
Because when you exit the ride, and I'll jump to this real quick before talking about the ride itself, you obviously go through the Empire of the Penguin, the old exhibit. Now it's just the Penguin Trek exhibit. But the way it works is they kind of in reverse engineer to use some of the old queue that would let you to the dark ride to now go through the caves, I guess, the ice caves to the exhibit, and then you leave through the exhibit, and it just works. It just works so well. Oh my god, it's great. It's just kind of like reverse Manta.
Yeah.
You have the exhibit after.
It's sort of like Wild Arctic.
Yeah, it's kind of like Arctic Rescue and stuff.
Like a second coming
of
Base Station Wild Arctic, but
they call it Sea Station Antarctic, right?
So yeah, it's Yeah, Sea Lab Antarctica or something.
Sea Station,
yeah.
I think it was literally Sea Station Antarctica, and you were like,
oh yeah,
wow,
it's like Base Station.
It's like
Wild
so
Arctic.
much like
Sea
Base Station Wild
Atlantic.
Arctic.
Yeah.
And there's education on there.
It was the queue was really pleasant. It felt like it reminded us of what Jurassic Flyer at Universal Studios Beijing wanted to do, but instead of being backstage in like the break rooms for raptor trainers and shit, you're backstage in the marine biologist room, and there's like the kitchen and the fridge, and like both of these rides have decorative refrigerators
and bulletin boards
that say like human food only. Both rides have that, but something about SeaWorld is actually executed better. Which, no offense to SeaWorld, but like that's bad. Like,
no, I mean this is good. It's good.
It's bad that SeaWorld is executing something similar.
It's bad that Universal.
It's bad for Universal.
Executed.
Yeah. Like SeaWorld should not be able to like run circles around Universal in like the theme storytelling department, and like here they are.
Yeah.
In a way that is like so similar, like it is so apparent that they have the same kind of approach to this queue of like the queue is backstage where the scientists are, and you're seeing like their break area.
The Sea Station, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
And it's like, wow, this is like Universal Beijing's dinosaur flyer thingy, but like better. Like what it should have been. And there's lots of great Easter eggs and stuff and references to SeaWorld, so
yeah,
really,
and I found it quite educational. It talks about like 4 different kinds of penguins, and it talks about all these other sea creatures, just kind of on these bulletin boards. And I strangely enjoyed it. And I will say operations were good. They barely were stacking, if stacking at all. So they were pushing out trains. And then when you get to the station, you climb a big stair, and then you cross the station, which I enjoy seeing the whole kind of station. And then there was a lot of detail. I mean, I was really impressed with all of that.
Yeah.
And the ride experience itself, it starts off with what is like a quasi-dark ride. Like, I have a couple of S-turns, which are decently speed. And so I guess if I understand it correctly, we're in the caves, and there's a cute little sound it makes, like a snowmobile sound.
It has snowmobile off-board audio for in the station.
And then the first scene is a snowmobile in these caves, and then you keep going, and then you kind of peek through, and you see all these penguins outside jumping in the water. And then it looks like the cave, I guess, is collapsing on you. And then you make it turn into a bigger room, which is kind of dark, and I feel like maybe there was supposed to be a scene there. And then the ice continues to collapse, and then you launch outward and then up. You launch uphill, and so the dark ride it's nice in not having it at all. It's not super super important, but it's very enjoyable.
It's cute. It's different. It's better than some of the other versions of like. It's better than like what some parks have done to like incorporate a dark ride.
Oh, totally. No, I liked
the front end of their coaster.
It didn't feel that cheap or anything.
Yeah,
yeah. Ride wise itself, it doesn't. I want to say it doesn't do a whole lot. It doesn't have a lot of forces. It's kind of forceless. It's very much family focused.
It doesn't really have elements that are like major sequential things.
Yeah,
like it just sort of meanders around, but it's really nice.
I love my lateral
for what it is.
I love my lateral movements. I like my twister sections. It really is just like a giant twister, like being in a twister section with helices and turns and overbank turns and kind of zigzaggy stuff. And it's definitely different. Doesn't feel like anything the park already had, which is refreshing. And it's long, which helps. It has 2 launches. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I really did. Again, there's not a lot of force. And I will say, it kind of has the same problem with the rattliness.
Yeah.
There
were 2 parts that shuffled. As we were taking off on the final launch, it shuffled as we got to the end of the launch. Like, it felt really random that it shuffled right there. Because up to that point, the ride felt fairly smooth. And then it shuffles again really bad in the last turn before the final brakes.
Yeah, I feel like the tightest turn, I feel like it was kind of
rattly. It wasn't enough to, like, deter the ride, because the rest of the ride felt really smooth. But it was also like, ooh, like they need to get out in front of that and like get that sorted out before it becomes a problem.
No, legroom was fine. The seats are quite elevated, which helps. Again, same uncomfortable lap bar that we have on Phoenix Rising, but somehow it didn't feel as bad to me.
Bad as what I was expecting.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was a lot more noticeable on Phoenix Rising, and I was just kind of really uncomfortable on that. But then I really wasn't that uncomfortable on Penguin Trek. But overall, I mean, I think from queue, station, ride experience with the dark ride, the roller coaster, followed by the exhibit, like through the actual indoor penguin exhibit. You get so close to the penguins. I mean, overall, like, slam dunk. I really think it is one of SeaWorld's best recent products, and I really think they knocked it out of the park. I'm really
between this and
happy for them.
The one at SeaWorld San Diego.
Yeah, we didn't do an episode about that. We just rode Arctic Rescue in San Diego.
So, the SeaWorld parks are having a great year for coasters.
I think so. I feel like Arctic Rescue, there was just no room for the queue, and of course you dump into Wild Arctic, which has a massive exhibit, which is still a nicer exhibit than the Penguin Trek exhibit. But of course it doesn't quite have the queue. But I like the station a lot for that one too. They both have very different approaches and styles. One is really meant to be an Orlando competitive. Yeah. And the other one is really meant to be, like, fitting in with the new aesthetic of Wild Arctic at SeaWorld San Diego. But SeaWorld San Diego has a lot of on-ride theming.
San Diego has a lot of props.
Like, on-the-ride and tunnels. And
whereas Penguin Trek doesn't have props.
I was thinking about that. I almost wish that there was, like, a helicopter or maybe some snowmobiles, like, in the infields. Yeah. Not a lot of space for that. But that's the nice thing about Arctic Rescue is that it feels like, of course, you're much more like you're on a snowmobile because that's just kind of the seated position, and you have all that theming on the ride itself. But I still think Penguin Trek is like the better overall product. Yeah. But yeah, I really enjoyed all 3 rides, but definitely some more than others.
Yeah, Penguin Trek, based on what people had been telling me about this restraints and like the discomfort issue, I kind of thought it would be a one and done. But now I'm like, I'll ride that more. Look forward to riding that again. Like, that'll be fun. I
think that I'm not sure if I speak for you too, but I think the biggest surprise of the 3 was Penguin Trek. Yeah. Because I thought maybe I didn't have crazy high expectations for it. What I was pleasantly surprised by, not the biggest surprise, but really pleasantly surprised was by Adventure. And then I think Phoenix Rising actually didn't live up to the expectation, I'll be honest. Yeah. Like, it's fine for what it is, but it shouldn't ride the way it does. The audio should be working, and the other 2 rides, the Orlando 2 rides, I think, are definitely better.
Hopefully when we go back and when I ride Phoenix Rising with you, and it'll be like your second ride on it, it'll be a better experience.
Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that covers it.
Well, this is a bonus episode that ended up also being the same length of a regular episode.
Yeah, we were like, this will be a shorter episode.
And then we spent 35 minutes talking about Bayou Adventure. Yeah. And we will... we're going to launch this as a special bonus, so this is not any range of any other episodes. So make sure you check out our usually scheduled episodes every Wednesday. Wherever you're listening, it's be a really cute time for you to share the love, give us 5 stars. Share this episode with any Disney fans, anyone you want to share anything Orlando with. We haven't been doing a lot of US related episodes, so share the love, and we will catch you guys on another episode soon. Bye! Bye!